The rules are the rules. Let's figure out what the Speaker thinks the rules are.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
So the Speaker of the House is in the House, and of course, if you're seeing this for the first time at 7:30 on MyRide TV or Fox Providence at midnight on this Thursday, you know that you know what is flying all around Washington and Texas and the border. But let's forego that conversation for tonight because there's so much that we need to accomplish. Whenever the Speaker's in studio, we give them the respect to kind of get after the issues of the day, because sometimes they're lengthy answers to, we think, simple questions, but nothing's ever simple. So we'll show you a couple of headlines here that kind of rule the tone of the news cycle right now. Packed hearing for a rules conversation, which is just in and of itself unusual. And of course, this progressive group that has surfaced in or reform, or they're the same thing, or it depends on the situation, really banging away at the Speaker on the way the place is run. Here was some of their tone prior to a hearing this week.
We need to shake up the way things are being done here. The system is broken. We have to sit around for weeks and months and years sometimes to have our bills even given an opportunity.
Right, and the Speaker has his own perspective. I've run this a few times. I find this to be very Nick Mattiello.
We'll make sure that our rules are fair, promote collaboration, are very inclusive to all, but that there's an appropriate screening process so bad ideas don't go through.
I love that. And of course, the question is, who is the arbiter of a bad idea, right?
Well, it's everybody. It's the majority of folks there. Now, you showed a little scene with Teresa Tanzi complaining. You know, you have a group of legislators. They're a minority group. They call themselves the Reform Caucus. Let me point out that every one of them last year voted for the rules as they are. They want what they want, no matter how good or bad the idea is. They just want what they want. And, you know, I refer to them as the high tax caucus. You know, if you look at what they want to do and the sum total of their policies, Rhode Island would go in the wrong direction. So you need a screening process, and it's ultimately it's executed by the majority of the members in the House.
All right, so let's go backwards, because I haven't said Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You've won an election by a less narrow margin against Steve Frias, the Republican. You won the speakership again. Let's give credit where credit is due. Congratulations on both of those things.
Thank you.
What do you think put you over, both at home and on the Hill?
Policy, you know, and you tie this in with the rules. Good budgets, car tax relief, not doing the, sorry Dan, not doing the Porsac Stadium. All of those things, I have found that if you listen to the public and you do what they want, they will back you up. Now, just put things in perspective. They threw more at me in the last election than at any elected official in the last 50 or 100 years in a district race or a local race.
Who do you think they was?
You know who they were. Well, some of the progressives. The progressives were canvassing, knocking on doors, telling Democrats not to vote for me. So all of these, you know, the high tax caucus folks, they were connected with someone trying to get me unelected. It's the House of Ambition, and people want to move up. People want, you know, if you're in the position, it's a hard work position, but everybody wants to be speaker. So I bet you 80% of those people see themselves as speaker. So the progressives were in my district. you know, obviously some of the labor groups, you know which ones they were. They were in one labor group was in my district canvassing against me. They did a lot of mailing. They threw a lot of stuff at me.
Though the labor group was on you because of the Paw Sox situation.
Yeah, and others. That and other
well, the
reasons.
progressive movement has their thing. The labor movement that reportedly was in there, I'm not exactly sure how effective they were. When we say in there, in District 15, in the district.
Spent a lot of money.
Spent a lot of money.
A lot
All right,
of
so
money.
listen. I think your track record, your relationship with the district, your credibility and a little bit of Democratic momentum in the interval of race got you where it needs to be. I was actually thinking I was going to bypass the Paw Sox conversation tonight because I'm so aggravated with you over it. I really want to start the 2019 conversation in a whole different way. Well, you and I have had a long thing, back and forth, on the record, off the record, over beer, here, doesn't matter. These conversations are not secret to you and I. I just think that since you brought it up, let's punctuate it with this question. If you could do anything over again, would you?
No.
That's what frightens me.
No, the reason I wouldn't is my only goal was to listen to the public. The public did not want to guarantee the loans. And
when the public was told, when the public was asked, do you want to put taxpayer money into a stadium? They said no. When the public was told that we're already in a public-private partnership, and they went, "Oh, really?" Then they said, "Yes." Well, it was about informing the public properly.
Thank you. And if there's one thing that I think should have been done differently, and it falls on the Paw Sox, they should have had a much better conversation with all of the residents of Rhode Island. Needed to be marketed better. Our citizens needed to be better educated. They seem to concentrate on the Senate President, the governor, and myself. And that was probably the wrong way to go. And I told them early on, by the way, Dan, I said, you got to get the public on board. You have to have a conversation with the public. You got to educate the public. You got to market this thing. And you got to have the. I'll do it if the public wants to do it, but we're listening to the public. And I stayed true to my word, and we did exactly what we said.
All right, you and I will never see this the same way.
And I respect that.
Mutually. But here's the thing. What was really disappointing, more so on the governor's part for not drawing you all together, was that you, the Speaker, the Senate President, the Paw Sox, never sat in the same room together and locked yourselves together to say, look, we're going to get this thing done once and for all. Don't you regret that, even though it might not have been your purview to call it? Because the politics of this, in your defense, were hers this time. You were on the Providence thing, and you're like, all right, that thing didn't work, and God rest his soul, Jim Skeffington passed, and the heat on that one passed. You gave this one to the governor to lead, and I thought she did a miserable job doing it. You guys ought to have been in the same room.
I will not disagree with that. The strength in Rhode Island is that you can get the governor, the speaker, and the Senate president in the same room pretty quickly.
Well, you just did on the Pawtucket Hasbro situation.
Yes.
By the way, why don't let's cover that. Then we'll get back to how you run the General Assembly in our next segment. You, meaning state government, collectively, cannot look Pawtucket in the eye and support Hasbro's effort to move out, in my judgment. Hasbro is going to be a mercenary in this deal. They're going to look for the best bang for the buck, right, with some considerations for their quality of life and what they think they're going to build. But Hasbro walks out of that city, kiss it goodbye. How many blows can that city get? So tell me where your priority is.
Well, my priority is that Hasbro stays in Pawtucket, and quite frankly, perhaps,
what are you going to do to set that up?
Well, we're gonna have conversations with them. The governor has been, in fact, doing that, and we're conversing with the governor. I think she's doing a really good job relative to Hasbro, and we'll work together on it, and I'm sure they're going to want some incentives at the end of the day. Now, here's what I will say, Dan, because I agree with you. I would be myself. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I would, for myself, be willing to give more incentive for them to stay in Pawtucket versus any other Rhode Island community. Having said that, it is imperative that Hasbro stay in the state of Rhode Island. So if they're just committed to going somewhere else, we will, of course, abide by that commitment.
Well, gee,
of
it would have
theirs.
been great to have a stadium where there was Hasbro Stadium and there was a whole big build and they could have a river walk and do all the things in a life center that they wanted to do.
I don't think that's what they were interested in.
Well, you know what? Easy to say that now. However, there's still land there. There's still an Apex building that can be a different use. There's a whole bunch of center of Pawtucket that can still be modernized for perhaps a new campus.
Yeah.
That's your priority?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's priority number one.
Right.
Priority number two is that they stay in the state of Rhode Island.
That's that.
And we put some resources behind that priority.
Well, it's going to have to be tens of millions of dollars, correct? It's going to have to be tens of millions of dollars.
I have not had that conversation yet, but Hasbro is important to the state of Rhode Island.
All right. When we come back, we'll get back to the rules a little bit. Stay with us.
I think we do line up with the Speaker, and of course there's things that we don't agree with him on economics. I think we're concerned about the corporate welfare state we're establishing, but in terms of lowering taxes, I think Republicans and the Speaker are on the same page. So where we align with the Speaker, we will work with him and we'll support proposals, and where we disagree with the Speaker, we will oppose him and oppose those proposals, and same with the progressives.
Define corporate welfare.
I think that many of the incentive programs in our state reward individual companies, and I don't think that the government should be handing out the people's money. I think that that money is much better spent by taxpayers, and that creates a much more robust economic development and organic.
So that is Blake Filippi. He's the minority leader now of the phone booth of Republicans, and I always kind of chide them that way and have some fun with them. They have an interesting common ground on these rules changes that they'd like to see accomplished, but they have no common ground with the ideology that supports the reformers, the progressive reformers. So I think you're doing this thing where you're trying to, well, let me ask you, are you smelling out the difference between legitimate process changes and process changes to avail a quicker road for ideology that you're freaked out about?
Yes, absolutely.
You see the Republicans as allies? This guy Filippi seems like a pretty level-headed, humble guy.
He's a very level-headed, humble, smart guy. I have a great relationship with him. I have a great relationship with the Republican caucus, and I'm really looking forward.
And you're going to need him.
Well, perhaps. I'm not going to be disingenuous. Perhaps, but I probably don't need them. I probably want them. And they have some good ideas, so we're gonna collaborate a little better. But I've always worked closely. If you look last year, some of the high tax caucus members, they get upset with me because I passed Republican bills. We passed a lot of Republican bills last year.
By the way, I think we've broken a little news. I don't know that you've said that anywhere on the record, but it's going. I think you like saying it, and it's going to catch. It's going to catch on pretty quickly. The high tax caucus members, rather than the reform members. You're ready to do some battle there. There's no doubt about it.
No,
come on. That's a battle cry. I mean, that's a branding cry. Of course it is. It's a competitive position that you're trying to establish. I'm calling them the high tax people to try to create a different brand.
It's simply what they are. Their policies, if you look at the sum total of all of their policies, they're anti-economic growth. So, not every one of them, but the sum total of them. So you just have to let the public know what the choice is. And I got to be honest with you, Dan, people come up to me virtually every day and ask me to resist the members of that caucus. Relative to the rules, you had a packed rules committee the other night. I might have gotten no more than 2 emails on it. Nobody is asking me about it. Nobody cares about it. This is an internal game with this high tax caucus wanting to gain ground so that they can pass their bad bills.
I want to go right back to that, but I don't want to miss something that Filippi said yesterday on the show, and that is, or last night, he says he agrees with you on tax policy for the most part, but he doesn't like this corporate welfare. I'm with him on that. This is mostly the governor's presentation, which is picking winners and losers, targeting businesses, industries, and specific companies. I've always thought that while those are things she can say, hey, look what we did, we have jobs here, I don't think that's the fertile, consistent ground that needs to be established. Are you going to have a different thought on that in this cycle?
I've got a very open mind on that. I respect Leader Filippi's viewpoint on that. I respect your viewpoint on that. I sometimes think that. But the governor is the governor, and this is important to her. And when I talked to the governor about it, she says if other states didn't do it, we wouldn't have to compete at the same level with them. And she has a point there. It's probably not the best policy and process in the world, but if others are doing it, you don't want to give up all your ground to them.
So you say nobody really cares about this. I've been joking about how hard it is to interest people in this conversation, but since you're doing some movement on it, here's what the high tax group caucus is looking for. They want to require, you can read along with me, Speaker, require the text of any bill be published 48 hours before a final vote. If a bill is submitted in 1 year, it carries to the second, and then allow the House rules to be suspended only by a vote of 2/3 of representatives.
Well,
your take on that is what?
All right, let me address all of those.
As quick as you can.
First of all, the suspension. I've been there 12 years. We've always suspended the rules, and nobody's ever objected.
And that means what to the layman?
We move bills faster. You know, first time around, you're more deliberate, you're slower with the bills. After you're dealing with Senate bills and not House bills, they've been heard once in committee. At the very end, after we collaborate with the Senate, we move them much faster.
Do things sneak in that housekeeping process?
Nope, they've all been heard previously. There are no big initiatives at the end. They're all bills that have been heard very deliberatively early on.
What about the 2-day notice?
The 2-day notice, I've always thought, quite frankly, that we should post differently. So I think what we're going to do is you post 48 hours in advance, the original bill, and then we're going to create a link within 24 hours. So we're going to give 24 hours notice. Now, here's my only concern with that. It's a legitimate point. It's just logistics. You don't want to be there until late August. You know, one of the high tax caucus members was in my office the other day, and she said, I've got to go to Jamaica. And I said, no, you better cancel that trip, because if we don't suspend the rules and if members don't want to suspend the rules, I'm okay with it. I love being at the Assembly. I said, we're going to be there until August, and if you want to be there, suspend your trip. I guarantee you, Dan, every one of these members at the end of session will be begging to suspend the rules, because if they want to stay, I'm happy to be there.
And you've made commitments, and you've kept them, not to go into the wee hours.
Yep.
And to try to wrap up on time. The second graphic on this is kind of your ideas, right? So to that point, there's your 24 hours for substantive changes. But then you're bogged down in this compliance, conduct, sexual harassment. Have they cornered you on this? Because, listen, regulating the behavior, listen, rank and file employees of state government need all the protections of human resources when a sexual harassment and or conduct issue appears. But this over-conversation about regulating the behavior of elected officials is getting a little nauseating for me.
For me also.
Well, it seems like you're bending on this a lot.
No, Dan, what I'm doing is I'm creating a process. So if someone wants to make their complaint, there is a process, and it's in place, and we'll fully investigate. And we're going to hire someone. I've been giving it a lot of thought. I don't want to hire someone. And you made a comment about me, and
I said hire Joe the barber, because it's a no-show job.
Well, so
it's because there's nobody in. It's not like there's. I remember.
I agree with that.
The Charlie Brown. Remember Lucy? She had her little psychiatric thing. You put a nickel in. It's kind of like no one's in the office. But if someone's going to complain, you're going to hire somebody to come in and take a.
So here's what we're going to do. I think, and it's still a work in process. But I think we're going to. There's law firms out there that do human relations work, that investigate for municipalities. Put them on retainer when you need them, hopefully extremely infrequently.
That makes sense.
We hire them, they come in, do a full investigation, report to the committee. The investigation will be private, the committee work will be public.
Gotcha.
And so I think that, I just want to put a process in place, because in the last election, something broke within the last week before the election, clearly political, clearly ridiculous, and important issues such as sexual harassment, and it's an extraordinarily important issue. I feel as though society needs to protect people that are working and that have to support their families. That issue should not be used as a political sword.
Clearly, the Speaker has television instinct, because that is a segue. We'll clean up that matter when we come back. Stay with us.
Mattiello criticized the media for reporting on his handling of sexual harassment claims made against former chair of the House Finance Committee, Cale Keeble, who lost his race Tuesday night.
You folks just don't know the facts.
Shortly after this remark, we asked Mattiello for a live interview. Our cameras still rolling. This was his response.
Where do you need him? Right here? Don't want to?
I'm going to have a new policy going forward. News media outlets that treat me fairly and are objective, I'm going to converse more with. And when I feel otherwise, and obviously you disagree with me, but...
All right, there's two issues that come there. One is the story that dropped. Ted Nesi had a story on WPRI.com and Target 12, or Eyewitness News, regarding this controversy between Cale Keeble and Representative Kazarian, where you were asked about your accountability and what you did about those two. Clearly, that's election night, by the way.
Yeah.
Clear up the data on that story. You started to talk about it. What is the executive summary on that particular
on the incident itself?
Yeah.
She had a complaint. She brought it to me. There were plenty of witnesses there. She asked that I keep it confidential and separate the two. I did exactly what she asked, and there was never an incident again about it, and it was about 4 years ago. So when it resurrected itself a week before the election, and you know the particular news media outlet ran with it, I thought it was actually ridiculous and unfair. So I mean, my handling of that, I will stand by that in any professional human resource setting there is. We listened to the complaint, did exactly what she wanted, which was both keep it confidential and separate him from her, and we accomplished both.
All right, well, I'm sure that Ted's work, and he's an outstanding journalist, one that I have tremendous respect for. I'm guessing you do, too.
Yes, I do, but
you can work that out with him, because it has not been my bailiwick. But here's the thing.
We don't have an issue. I think it's wrong, and I will always think it's wrong till my dying day to air that kind of a story a week or 10 days before an election. It was clearly an attack on me.
Point made. But here's the thing. I've never known you. I mean, even you and I have had some good battles. Maybe there's some space that we put in between, but we've never had one of these, I only pick the people that do, that was very Trumpian, and
yes.
I thought out of character for you.
Yes, it was wrong, and when I was asked about it a few days later, I said I don't have a new policy. I was caught up in the emotion of an election night, and you know, between the reporting of that story and election night, I thought the story was extremely unfair, and my emotion came out, which it probably should not have. But I have no new policy. I've already stated
Gotcha.
that.
So Eyewitness News, Ted Nesi, Kim Kalunian, who, by the way, are married.
Yes.
They're professionals who work
Nice,
separately.
great people.
They are not on your avoid list. Eyewitness News is not on your avoid list. None of that is true.
No, I actually like both of them. You know, truth be told, they just asked us to go on for the rules. I refused because it's a non-story. If they asked me to go on for something more interesting, I'd go on. But nobody wants to hear about the rules. The other two reps that went on, the reports that I received regarding it is people couldn't keep their eyes open.
Well, I appreciate you coming on for the rules for me. I feel special. Anyway, come back often, will you, so we can set priorities for 2019.
My pleasure.
Congratulations, Speaker.
Thank you, Dan.
Great
Always a pleasure to see you.
All right, final word and we get back. Stay with us. So, what we've learned here is the Speaker now refers to the reform group as the High Tax Caucus. That ought to stick. We've learned that he's going to hire kind of a on-contingency retainer lawyer, perhaps, to handle sexual harassment issues. And he no longer has a feeling that he's going to, how would you say, pick his favorite media outlets, which I think ought to be a relief to him and to the rest of us, because the last thing we need is that kind of media manipulation in terms of serving the general public. So it seems like a good night's work. We'll see you tomorrow. Important conversation on MLK Day coming up in another weekend, and of course on the radio at 3 until 6 on WPRO. Good night.